Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome back to the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle here with some in-depth wide receiver breakdowns for week 4 of the NFL season with our start and sit video. And like we do every single week, we got to take a look at last week and see what our success rate was. And last week for wide receivers, I mean, it wasn't great for me, but it was just a disaster overall. So let's go ahead and show those scores from last week. Last week having a 61%, better than the week before, or right around the same as the week before. I don't remember week 2 to begin with, but week 3, 61%, not great. But here are wide receivers that we listed as starts that you absolutely were starting that didn't hit 10 fantasy points last week. Stephon Diggs, Terry McLaurin, CeeDee Lamb, Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill, Courtland Sutton, Julio Jones with A.J. Brown being out, Tyler Lockett, Amari Cooper. None of those guys got over 10 fantasy points per game. What about A.J. Brown getting hurt? Juju Smith-Schuster went out and was hurt. DeAndre Hopkins went into the game banged up. Marquise Brown had multiple bad drops. All of these guys listed as starts last week ended up either going out in the game, and now obviously they don't, Juju and AJ Brown, they don't go against the record because they got hurt in the middle of the game. Nothing we can do about that. But still, I mean, those are guys that we started that could have helped and they didn't. And Julio Jones not being able to get with AJ Brown, man, last week was tough. So hopefully, fingers crossed, things go a little bit better for us this week. But don't forget, only a couple of more days to enter into our September giveaway. That's right, if you download the Prize Picks app right now, sign up for a new account using code word headliners and deposit $20. You are going to be entered into our contest for September, giving away a Manscaped Perfect package. We've got this Justin Jefferson signed jersey, and then we also have a Trevor Lawrence rookie card. We're going to package it all up and we're going to send it to you, but you got to do it soon because it's done at the month of September. So once again, download the Prize Picks app. Make sure you sign up using code word headliners and deposit at least $20. Ladies and gentlemen, week 3, it's behind us. It's time to move on. We need to jump into week 4. Let's get it going. Week 4 is going to kick off with Jacksonville at Cincinnati, and for Jacksonville, Marvin Jones Jr., DJ Chark. Obviously, Chark scored last week. Jones a little bit more disappointing, but going up against Cincinnati, who allows over 40 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, we are going to start both of these guys. Now, Jones should see plenty of volume, but Chark continues to be like a boomer bust play, right? Not a whole lot of receptions this year. Some big receptions, couple touchdowns, but that's really been it. And for Laviska Shenault, we're moving away from him right now because funny thing is, he has just as many targets as Tyler Lockett, but he is nowhere close in fantasy points. There's no upside, because the receptions he's getting are super close to the line. There's no blocking down the field. He's not making anybody miss, and because of that, he's not breaking any big plays. For Cincinnati, oh my God, Jamar Chase. I mean, the connection there with Joe Burrow is fantastic. Yes, I was a little bit lower on him than where he is right now. I had him as like a low wide receiver too, because I did think with the year off, it might take him a little bit to get going. It has not, but I tried to tell you all there towards the end of the preseason, don't let those drops worry you, right? It happens all the time. Not worried about it with Jamar Chase. The talent is winning out right now. This kid can score from anywhere. Right now, he's tied for the league lead in touchdowns of 40+ yards. Tyler Boyd did lead the team with 6 targets last week, so we're going to list him as a start again this week. Going up against Jacksonville, especially if T. Higgins were to play. Now, I'm going to list T. Higgins as a start right now, but we have absolutely no idea if he'll end up playing. We got to monitor it the rest of the week. Washington at Atlanta is going to bring my Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week. Manscaped is back as one of our main sponsors here in the 2021 season. If you head over there and use code word headliners when you check out, you're going to get 20% off your entire order, and you're going to get free shipping. So make sure if you need to spruce up a little bit, you're doing it with Manscaped and using code word headliners to get yourself a nice and sweet 20% discount. And of course, that free shipping. Now, the reason we're going with this Manscaped must-watch matchup is not necessarily on the Washington side. We're going back to Terry McLaurin, and I'm even going to go back to Adam Humphries this week. I am worried about the upside of Terry McLaurin because the run game against Atlanta could be a little bit more. They could try to rejuvenate it a little bit again this week with Antonio Gibson, but it could also end up being a really big back and forth as well. So Terry McLaurin has a whole lot of upside, or he has a really low floor this week. He has a very wide range of outcomes. I think this could end up being back and forth, a tough matchup though, just with what the Washington defense has looked like so far. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but only 2 less targets than Logan Thomas right now, Adam Humphries, for that second target on the team. So there's not a whole lot of upside with Adam Humphries. But if you're dealing with injuries, if you're having issues filling a spot like a wide receiver 3 in PPR leagues, I think you could do a lot worse than Adam Humphries. And again, what could end up being a game that has a ton of back and forth. Now, the reason this is my Manscaped must-watch matchup is because of Calvin Ridley. Washington is surprisingly allowing the second most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers right now. So Calvin Ridley, let's see this dude go absolutely ape this week. Let's see him get back to being that guy, that big play potential, the high upside, the wide receiver one, all of those things. Olamide Zaccheaus for me is still going to be a sit, even with Russell Gage being out. Targets right now are going to Ridley, Patterson, Davis, and Pitts. And I don't have Patterson listed here this week because we moved him back to running back, as we told you last week, which would end up happening. He's only played 16 snaps at wide receiver this year. So if you have him as a wide receiver, you can definitely use him, but he's not actually playing wide receiver. So we're going to leave him at running back. Houston at Buffalo, and I think I saw like Buffalo is a 16.5 point favorite right now. Holy cow. For Houston, Brandon Cooks is going to be a start right now. He is tied for 4th in the league in targets. And even though this will be a tough matchup, we're still going to list him as a start because he's getting enough targets, but the ceiling is not going to be too high this week. Buffalo allows the second fewest fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. So everybody under him, we're not going to worry about it. Brandon Cooks, though, he's getting so much volume, we've got to list him as a start. For Buffalo, however, we're going with Diggs, Beasley, and Emmanuel Sanders because Buffalo will probably blow Houston out, but Buffalo won by 22 points against Washington last weekend, still threw the ball 43 times. We've told you a lot of times on this show, Buffalo is a team that does not take their foot off the gas, and they will do so against Washington. They'll do so against Houston again this week. And Emmanuel Sanders, he's not getting the same volume as Diggs or Beasley right now, but he has more yards per reception than both of these guys right now. So he is a guy that's actually making some pretty big plays and is fantasy relevant. Detroit at Chicago, and I do not have anybody starting for the Lions wide receivers this week. Tough matchup going up against Chicago. And right now, Khalif Raymond and Quintus Cephas kind of be doing this dance back and forth. Raymond is basically past Cephas, is kind of the volume type of guy in this offense. He leads this team in all, or he's past Cephas, in all major receiving categories at this point. So he's not really a guy that has established himself because Cephas was the guy in week 2, right? He had a couple of big plays there against the Green Bay Packers. And then last week he goes missing and Khalif Raymond is the guy. So we'll see how this plays out. But I'm expecting a lot of DeAndre Swift, a lot of Jamal Williams, a lot of TJ Hawkinson this week going up against Chicago. And for Chicago, listen, we don't even know who the starter is yet at this point. Whoever it is, Matt Nagy better come with a much better game plan than what he had last week, because that was absolutely atrocious. We've done nothing but just slander Matt Nagy this week, and we're going to continue to do it. Hopefully Matt Nagy, my notes literally say, hopefully Matt Nagy is not a big D bag again. That's what I said in my notes. This should be Fields' breakout if he starts. If not, and it's Andy Dalton should have a good game. If Nick Foles plays, Nick Foles should have a good game. Whatever it is, okay? If it's a Justin Fields breakout, it's Allen Robinson. Now, Detroit has been middle of the road, right? If you look at their stats, they're kind of middle of the road right now. But 3 big drop passes from Marquise Brown last week really kept these numbers down. If he catches those balls, number 1, Justin Tucker never needs to even kick that field goal. And number 2, the Lions get absolutely thrashed through the air last week. So Marquise Brown really should be the one to thank right now that the Lions' defensive statistics don't look as bad as they do. And because of Marquise Brown beating them consistently last week, we're going to go with Darnell Mooney. And not only that, but MVS 2 weeks ago against Detroit consistently beat them down the field. However, Aaron Rodgers just couldn't seem to get the ball to him. So I am starting Darnell Mooney this week and expecting at least one big play to go over the top. Carolina at Dallas, and DJ Moore continues to be the target hog. I can't even talk. I haven't been drinking. I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, it's just super late and I'm tired. So, but we're going to keep the energy up, ladies and gentlemen. DJ Moore, okay? Target hog in this offense so far. I mean, he's getting the first looks from Sam Darnold on a consistent basis. Now, this week, I'm expecting limited upside because Diggs has been absolutely fantastic at cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys, and that's who DJ Moore is going to see. Now, because of that, I am now going to be looking at Robbie Anderson and Terrace Marshall Jr. both to be starts as well. Now, AB killed Dallas. Antonio Brown killed Dallas out of the slot in week 1 in a high-scoring game, so I'm kind of expecting Terrace Marshall Jr. with no CMC to do the same thing. But on top of that, Anthony Brown, who's really played as the cornerback too for Dallas so far, has been burned by big plays several times this season. Robbie Anderson, I think, could definitely be a guy, again, kind of to go over the top and have that big play. Now, for Dallas, Dak looked great last week. The wide receivers did not. That doesn't happen very often. Tough performances in week 3 for CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, but in a high potential scoring affair. You can't sit either of these guys. Obviously, we don't love to see kind of the ups and downs with them, but we know the volume's going to be there. Just hopefully Dalton Schultz doesn't go crazy this week. Indianapolis at Miami, and Miami has done a decent job of kind of limiting some big play, or limiting some production by wide receivers, but they are prone to giving up big plays right now, and they've only allowed 4 catches in the red zone. And Zach Pascal is kind of that guy right now that's being looked at in the red zone. He has that touchdown upside while he's there, but I'm going to put Zach Pascal as a sit this week and Michael Pittman as a start for that reason, because Pascal doesn't have nearly the upside for that touchdown, whereas Pittman has more upside because Miami has been prone to giving up big plays. The volume has been there for Pittman. The big plays have been there for him. He just hasn't scored. If we get him scoring, he's really going to start rising up. Then for the Miami Dolphins, switching over to them, listen, the Miami Dolphins going up against Indianapolis. Jalen Waddle last week, even in a tough matchup, right? We said with Jacoby Brissett, what was the game plan going to look like? This did not look like a game plan that was dumbed down, that was watered down, that was made in any shape or form to get Jacoby Brissett easier looks. They went out there and they threw it. Now, for me, with Devontae Parker and Jalen Waddle, I'm going to go with both of those guys over Will Fuller. Indianapolis giving up quite a few fantasy points. They're giving up a lot of fantasy points this season so far to opposing wide receivers. So I would expect in this matchup, again, over 42 at this point, coming in inside the top 10 of most points allowed. So definitely expecting 2 of these guys to have a good game, and not ready to bank on Gesicki quite yet, but we'll talk about that in a different show. Cleveland at Minnesota, and I told you all I'm going to have to see it from OBJ before I buy into it again. I was pretty upset the first couple of weeks the dude wasn't on the field, but listen, he played well last week. And going up against Minnesota now, who has allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, we're definitely starting Odell Beckham Jr. He's healthy. They wanted to get him involved. Baker Mayfield was looking his way. Now, for Donovan Peoples-Jones, there is no team outside of Minnesota that allows more yards on fewer catches. So, Minnesota, big plays ahead, big plays allowed, big play touchdowns to DPJ Donovan Peoples-Jones. Love what they're doing, moving him around. He's getting a lot of snaps in the slot right now. Definitely a lot of upside for him this week going up against a team that gives up quite a bit. And for the Minnesota Vikings, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen will both be starts. KJ Osborne comes crashing back down to earth last week. Part of it was because of Tyler Conklin. We'll see if he gets back, but I'm going to be most interested about Dalvin Cook, because if he's playing, I think he gets involved in the passing game more than Alexander Mattison does. Cleveland has allowed the 7th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers this season and the 6th fewest receptions. So even though we have JJ and AT as starts this week, we are going to have to limit our expectations because the points and the yards and the receptions just might not be that high this week. New York Giants and the New Orleans Saints. Kenny Golladay is going to be a start for me, but we're going to have to watch the status of this game because right now I've got Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton listed as injured, out, doubtful. We have not heard anything. As of this recording, I have not heard anything about either of these guys playing this week, so we are going to have to be careful with this and see what happens. If they're both out, then we got to lock Kenny Golladay in because he should have more than enough opportunity on the road going up against Nolans. Now, for the New Orleans Saints, these wide receivers are pretty tricky right now. Kenny Stills did get on the field last week a little bit. I don't know if I'm expecting a whole lot of that because even like a guy like Lil Jordan Humphrey, has been getting on and off the field as well. So I'm not even including Kenny Stills as of yet. But Deontay Harris, almost half of his yards this season have come on one play. He's got like 116 receiving yards. 55 came on one play. So Marquez Callaway, hopefully last week is a sign of things to come. He's a little bit safer in this offense for me right now because he is still kind of that number one target. Deontay Harris really has relied on that one big play, a couple of big plays to kind of boost his numbers up. But Marquez Callaway has been more even across the board. So we're going to go with him and not Deontay Harris against the Giants this week. Tennessee and the New York Jets, and Julio will be the alpha this week if there is no A.J. Brown. And I've got him listed as injured, out, doubtful right now because I don't know either because I haven't heard anything about Antonio Brown since the game on Sunday. So right now, I am just going to move forward and think that A.J. Brown will probably either not play or be eliminated in some fashion. The Jets defense is actually allowing the 3rd fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers right now. I bet you didn't know that coming into today, unless you're a Jets fan. But I'm not banking on any of the wide receiver 2s for this game because, yes, I think Julio Jones is going to get a decent amount of looks, but let's not kid ourselves. It's Derrick Henry week. For the New York Jets, Corey Davis, we're going to get him back into the start column this week. The Titans are still allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers right now. He got 10 targets last week. He's going to get a ton of targets again. Wide receivers right now behind him are a mess. They're not playing well. Zach Wilson isn't playing well. So in a game in which you're going up against a team that's giving up so many fantasy points per wide receiver, you got to still get somebody from the wide receivers in there. So you got to take a look and say who has the best chance, because Davis is getting as many targets as he is. He's the one. KC at Philadelphia. And for the Kansas City Chiefs, the wide receiver 2 position is really just a revolving door right now. I don't know if Josh Gordon is going to play this week. If he doesn't, obviously we're not going to count him as a sit. I don't know if he's going to play this week. I don't really know a whole lot of what the timeline is for him. But who's going to be who's the wide receiver 2 on any given week? We've seen it be Hardman. We've seen it be Pringle. We've seen Demarcus Robinson kind of on and off the field a little bit. We know that Tyreek Hill's the guy, right? We know Tyreek Hill is going to be out there on a constant basis. We're going to keep him out there 100%. Obviously, Philadelphia did limit the wide receivers for Dallas this past weekend, but it was the run game, right? Tony Pollard, Zeke Elliott, and then some passes to Dalton Schultz that really kind of set the tone. So it wasn't really needed, but I don't expect them to limit Tyreek Hill too much this season. For the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Reagor, Devonta Smith are both going to be starts for me. They very well could end up being a miss again, and these guys are going to be much lower on my ranking. So even though I have them as a start, they're going to be towards the lower end of that. There were 14 targets between these two last week, and I think some of the inconsistencies we saw from Jalen Hurts is one of the reasons why I was worried about him coming into the season. Now, he has played well. Nothing against him. He's going to have some better days than what we saw this past week, but those inconsistencies are directly tied to Jalen Reagor and Devonta Smith. So if Hurts struggles, they're going to struggle, and we saw the tight ends this week really get involved. The Arizona Cardinals and the LA Rams, a nice divisional matchup coming up, which will be fun to watch. DeAndre Hopkins, hear me out. Now, I have him listed as a sit right now, okay? Is he still hurt? Yes or no? We need to hear more this week to see if he is, okay? So let's wait to hear a little bit more, see if he's hurt, and kind of go from there. Is he going to be limited? If DeAndre Hopkins is on the field this week, he's probably getting Jalen Ramsey. And if he's limited in any capacity, Jalen Ramsey's probably going to get the best of him. So if you have DeAndre Hopkins, you probably have to start him. But I am expecting less than 10 half PPR fantasy points from him this week. And that's why I have him listed as a sit. Now, this could all change. If they say he's 100% healthy, he's ready to go, there's no worries, no limitations, this changes because I'm starting DeAndre Hopkins 100%. But let's see what he gets in for practice and things like that. As of right now, based on all the information we have, I just don't see how he breaks 10 fantasy points this week. So I will be rolling over to AJ Green and Christian Kirk. This is becoming a little bit of a headache here for this team, though, right? Rondale Moore's had a big week. Christian Kirk's had a couple of big weeks. AJ Green seems to be getting going again. I mean, on a weekly basis, this is just going to be a really tough team to call, more than likely. And for the LA Rams, Cooper Kupp, damn, that connection with Matthew Stafford is strong. But this game going up Arizona has Bobby Trees written all over it. I know it hasn't happened yet. I know he's been a dud. This is kind of one of my last opportunities for him because Arizona has limited big plays, okay? So what Arizona does is they keep a lot of the receivers in front of them, and they do a good job of tackling after the catch. So they're limiting a lot of those big plays, which limits Van Jefferson and Deshaun Jackson. If they're leaving room in between like 10, 5 yards from the line of scrimmage, that is Robert Woods. That's where he's going to do a good job winning. And I think at this point, they're going to do what they can to try and get him going a little bit. Because, yeah, he hasn't done anything yet, but Robert Woods is still an integral part of this offense. He helps take pressure off Cooper Kupp. He helps take pressure off Tyler Higbee. He's still a guy that they're going to want producing, and I expect them to have a game plan for him this week. Seattle at San Francisco. DK Metcalf, there you are. Oh, by the way, Tyler Lockett, there you are as well. Tyler Lockett maybe not so much in a good way. DK Metcalf in a great way. But Tyler Lockett, there's that inconsistency. We know it's there. Every single week, there is an opportunity for Tyler Lockett to either win our game or lose our game. And this past week, he didn't really help us win, okay? We know that Tyler Lockett does that. Someone in the comments a couple of weeks ago tried to argue with me and say that Tyler Lockett has not been one of the most inconsistent people in the league in the last 2 years. And I was like, dude, I did an entire video on this, and I wrote on depth in him in the draft guide. What else do you want? And he goes, oh, cool, that's just your opinion. Yeah, I did the research, man. He is super inconsistent, and we saw it this past week, but we're still starting him, right? We said that at the beginning of the season. If you draft Tyler Lockett, you start him every single week. It doesn't matter on the matchup. So, going up against San Francisco, not a great week 3 for Deebo Samuel, but he still led the team in targets again and is really that go-to for Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham, that's not the right person. Jimmy Garoppolo. Again, super late. I'm tired. Need some rest. Got to finish this strong. Now, Brandon Ayuk appears to be out of the doghouse finally. 6 targets, 4 receptions, 37 yards, and 1 tutty. But here's the big thing. And here's the one thing that really matters to me. He only played 3 less snaps than Deebo Samuel. He's finally on the field. If he's going to be on the field, he's going to be looked at by Jimmy Garoppolo quite a bit. So will Deebo Samuel. Going up against Seattle, expect these two to get more than enough volume. Baltimore, Denver, and I would love to start Marquise Brown again this week. He's the wide receiver one in this offense right now. But Denver allows the 10th fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers, and they have only allowed 2 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers all season long. Denver limits big plays. Marquise Brown thrives on big plays. So if I had to expect somebody to have a better week this week, it would be Sammy Watkins over Marquise Brown. But I think we see the running game, and I think we see Mark Andrews. I think that is what we try to do, and it is in Denver, which makes it even more tough on this offense. And for the Denver Broncos, Cortland Sutton is going to be a wide receiver, and I'm going to talk about Noah Fant in the tight end video. But if Fant were to go off, Tim Patrick, who I also have as a start, is probably going to be a little bit more TD dependent. But going up against this Baltimore team, I think these guys, I think we're going to be throwing it quite a bit. Maybe not as much as we would have thought a couple of weeks ago, because Javonte Williams is kind of coming into his own, still using Melvin Gordon. And again, Noah Fant's kind of the key to me. If he has a big game, not both of these guys are going to have one as well. Pittsburgh at Green Bay. Juju Smith-Schuster, just some bruised ribs. Okay, just some bruised ribs, should end up being fine to play, but we're going to keep an eye on it. I've got him listed as a start right now because I anticipate him being out there. Deontay Johnson, haven't heard an update as of yet, so for Deontay Johnson, injured out, doubtful, leave him there. Chase Claypool, 15 targets last week. Whew. You know what's even more impressive? Najee Harris's 19 targets. If it wasn't for Najee Harris's 19 targets, oh my God, Chase Claypool would have probably had 20 targets last week. So if Deontay Johnson is out again, though, we've got to roll with Chase Claypool. And if Juju misses for some reason, then we even have to run with Chase Claypool even more. We know Green Bay has had some issues with really good offenses this season, giving up some big plays. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at Green Bay. And ladies and gentlemen, is it finally Marquez Valdes-Scantling season? I think it is. I think it is, because a couple of weeks ago I had him listed as a start, and I love the matchup against Detroit. He was underthrown once. Aaron Rodgers had him open for a touchdown, underthrew it, hit the cornerback in the back of the head. Then he had him open for another potential touchdown, overthrew it by a good 5 yards. And then he literally had him open for a touchdown in the end zone and threw it behind him. There was nobody near MVS, and Rodgers threw it like a foot behind him, and he couldn't get turned around. Okay, it's MVS. He's not seeing a ton of volume, but Rodgers is giving him premium targets. And by premium targets, I mean those deep targets, those red zone targets, those end zone targets, those premium targets that lead to more fantasy points, even though the volume isn't there. He's doing it. Pittsburgh allows the 5th most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. Devontae Adams, MVS, both of them looking for big weeks. Tom Brady is heading home to New England, and you best believe your sweet hind end that Tampa Bay is going to be throwing the football all over the place. Godwin, Evans, Brown, you start them all. I expect Antonio Brown to be back this week, obviously coming back from COVID, tested positive for it, but couldn't get in the game. I'm expecting that he will more than likely be back this week. If he's not, he becomes a sit. But Godwin and Evans, it doesn't change them at all. They're starting no matter what. For New England, this will bring me to my prize picks prop to watch for the week at the wide receiver position. Don't forget, talked about prize picks at the beginning of the video, but my prize picks props to watch in this game: Nelson Aguilar over 49.5 receiving yards and Jacoby Myers over 59.5 receiving yards. The Bucs allow the most fantasy points per game right now to opposing wide receivers, and they allow the deep ball. The deep ball has burned them so much this year. They have given up the 2nd most yards in the league and the most touchdowns. They're bringing in Richard Sherman. They're bringing him in to talk to him. Well, listen, Richard Sherman isn't just going to step on the field after being out all this time and just be like, boom, that's the guy shutting everybody down. No, I expect some big plays from Aguilar and a lot of volume from Myers this week. Look at you, Las Vegas, looking like a professional football team so far this season, but this week I'm not feeling it. Not for Edwards, Ruggs, or Renfro. Yes, Jake has Derek Carr as a start this week, but I think Derek Carr can become a start based solely on the volume that will probably go to Darren Waller. But the Chargers allow the 5th fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers, and they allow the 2nd fewest receiving yards. And this is a team that so far played Kansas City last week and got the win. They've gone up against San Francisco, right? They've gone up against, well, I mean, maybe I should look at the right schedule, right? I'm looking at the wrong schedule. They've gone up against Washington. They've gone up against the Dallas Cowboys, who throw it all over the place. They've gone up against the Chiefs, who throw it all over the place. Again, apologize for that. Wrong schedule that popped up there in front of me. But anyway, they've played a couple of teams that throw it all over the place, and they've still been able to limit that on defense. So I would expect them to do the same thing this week with Derek Carr and these wide receivers. For the Los Angeles Chargers, though, you got to absolutely go with Mike Williams, right? The wide receiver 2 right now in half PPR. Absolutely, you're playing him. Keenan Allen is the wide receiver 15 in half PPR. Both of them are starts every single week. Justin Herbert looked fantastic last week. We told you all to be patient, and it paid off. Another big game incoming. There you have it, Headliner Nation. My start and sit analysis for week 4 of the NFL season. Do me a favor, hit the like button down below and let me know a comment about one of these players. Like, who's the guy that you absolutely have in the lineup? Who's the guy you're absolutely sitting this week? And if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners, you got to hit that subscribe button, stick around, and become a part of Headliner Nation today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get out of here. Y'all stay safe. Y'all stay healthy. And I will catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.